Ready to dive in today. We're tackling a topic that's really blown up recently, the space industry.
It's definitely captured everyone's imagination.
And for good reason. But we're going beyond just the cool rockets and astronaut stuff. We're going deep on the business side, the economics of space. Our source today is a Wikipedia article about the industry, pretty neutral, factual stuff, which is exactly what we need to get a good overview.
Absolutely. You got to start with the basics.
So picture this. You hear space industry. What pops into your head first?
Probably something like rockets, satellites, the kind of stuff we see in the news all the time.
Right, the classic images. But the cool thing is, it's way bigger than that now. It's not just about the things we send to space. It's about the business that makes those things possible.
It's like the industry behind the industry in a way.
Exactly. It's its own economic engine now. And it's huge. Like, did you know that in 2018, global space activity generated over $414 billion?
That's billion with a B. It's a massive industry and only getting bigger.
And here's the thing. It's not just about the money, right? It's about the return on that investment. For every euro invested, the return is something like 6 euros.
That's incredible. You don't see returns like that in many industries.
Right. So it's not just about exploring space. It's about serious economic growth, too.
Yeah.
And that growth is fueled by constant innovation. Think about it. Pushing the boundaries in space leads to new technologies.
Which then end up having these huge impacts in other areas.
Exactly. Like what we're seeing in materials, science, telecommunications, even things like medical technology.
It's like this ripple effect. You invest in space exploration, and the benefits just kind of radiate outwards into all these other fields.
Okay, so we get it. Space industry is a financial powerhouse. But what does that actually mean? What are the pieces of this billion-dollar puzzle?
So there are basically three main sectors we need to think about.
Hit me with them.
All right, so first up, satellite manufacturing. This one's pretty self-explanatory. It's all about building the satellites that orbit Earth.
Which, by the way, are responsible for so much of what we rely on every day. GPS, communication, even just understanding our planet better.
It's true. We kind of take satellites for granted, but they're essential these days.
100%.
Yeah.
But those satellites don't just launch themselves, do they?
Nope. And that brings us to our second sector. Support ground equipment.
The unsung heroes, right?
Exactly. This is all the behind-the-scenes tech, the tracking stations, the control centers, all the complex systems needed to actually communicate with and operate those satellites.
It's like the mission control for the whole operation.
Exactly. And then last but not least, we've got the launch industry itself.
This is the part everyone gets excited about, the rockets.
For sure. This sector is all about building and launching the vehicles that actually carry everything else into space. And this is one area where we're seeing some really interesting changes happening right now.
Yeah, like what's going on with companies like SpaceX. They're really shaking things up. But we'll get into that more in just a bit after a quick break.
And we're back, ready to talk about the future of space.
The final frontier. Where do we even begin? Well, you mentioned space tourism earlier. Are we talking luxury moon hotels, asteroid-shaped cocktail bars? Because that I can get behind.
Well, those might be a few years off. The future of space is actually, and I kind of love the irony here, way more grounded than you might think.
Grounded? You're going to have to explain that one.
It's all about resources, the stuff we need to, actually build things. And asteroids, they're practically overflowing with it. Precious metals and minerals, stuff that's getting harder and harder to find here on Earth.
So instead of digging deeper into the Earth, we're going to start mining asteroids.
Exactly. It's called asteroid mining, and it's moving from science fiction to reality pretty quickly.
That is wild. And it's not just asteroids, right?
Right. We're also looking at the moon, especially for things like water ice at the poles. That's essential for a permanent human presence.
A lunar base, like a real-life moon base.
It's not that far-fetched. And think about the advancements it'll take to get there. We're talking robotics, automation, resource extraction on a whole new level.
Which, again, circles back to that ripple effect. Those advancements in space end up benefiting us right here on Earth, too.
100%. And it's not just about the tech either. We'll need new models for international cooperation, resource management. We're even talking about, like, space law.
Space law, is that a real thing?
Oh, yeah. It's a whole emerging field dealing with questions like, who owns the resources in space? How do we prevent conflict over those resources?
It's mind-blowing to think about, honestly. We're not just talking about exploring space anymore. We're talking about building a future out there.
And the decisions we make now about how we do that, They're going to shape that future for generations to come. It's a big responsibility.
It really is. But hey, that's why we're diving deep, right? Welcome back to the deep dive. Man, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We really have. From the economics of space to asteroid mining, lunar bases, even space law.
It's mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
But before we launch ourselves too far into the future, let's take a minute to recap for our listeners. What were some of the biggest takeaways for you?
For me, it's got to be the sheer scale of the space industry now. It's not just some niche thing anymore. It's a major economic force, and it's only getting bigger.
Right. And it's not just about governments anymore either. Private companies are really stepping up and changing the game.
SpaceX is a perfect example of that. They're pushing the boundaries of what's possible and making space more accessible in the process.
Absolutely. But all this progress, it comes with big questions, too.
Mhm.
We've talked about all these resources out there in space, but who owns them? It's a big question with no easy answers.
It's a question we have to answer, though. As we go further into space, how we manage those resources, how we cooperate internationally, those decisions will shape the future of space exploration.
It's a big responsibility, and it's not just on the shoulders of governments or companies. It's on all of us to think about the future we want to build in space.
And that's really what this deep dive has been all about, right? It's not just about the science and the technology, it's about the bigger picture. It's about what it means to be human in a universe full of possibilities.
Well said. So, listeners, that's our deep dive on the space industry. Hopefully you're feeling as inspired, maybe even a little overwhelmed as we are.
It's a lot to take in, but it's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just the beginning.
Exactly. So keep looking up the stars, keep asking those big questions, and until next time, thanks for joining us on the deep dive.